All right, so today we're going to do a deep dive on Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Everybody's talking about Bitcoin these days,
Yeah. It seems like it.
but how many of us really understand it?
Right.
You guys sent us a really interesting article that kind of unpacks the whole idea of Bitcoin.
Yeah, that's a good one.
It looks at the value
Huh.
and the legitimacy of it,
Right.
and then where it might be going in the future, especially with all these celebrities launching their own coins.
Yeah. It's interesting to think about where this is all headed.
So I guess that's the big question we're going to try to answer today. Is Bitcoin the future of finance?
Right.
Or is it just another big scam?
Well, I think like anything that promises to kind of revolutionize the way we think about money,
Yeah,
it's good to approach it with a healthy dose of skepticism
for sure.
and a willingness to learn.
Absolutely. And I think that's what we're here to do today, right?
Yeah,
Is
right.
to really understand
Yeah,
what Bitcoin is all about
for sure.
and how it works.
And how it could impact all of us. Yeah.
So the article kind of starts out by talking about the two different types of value that Bitcoin has.
Okay.
And it distinguishes between its application value
Right.
and then its investment value.
Yeah. That's a key distinction.
So can you break that down for us a little bit?
Yeah, so I think a good way to think about it is application value is what Bitcoin can actually be used for.
Okay.
Making secure and private transactions, it's kind of like a digital form of cash.
So it's like a super-powered Venmo,
Yeah, you could think of it that way.
but without any middleman.
Right, exactly.
Mm,
No banks or governments involved.
that's really interesting.
And then there's the investment value.
Right.
And this is all about Bitcoin's potential for growth.
Yeah.
And, this is where things get a little bit more speculative.
Right, because people are buying Bitcoin not just to use it.
Exactly.
They're buying it hoping that the price is going to skyrocket.
Yeah, and we've seen that happen in the past.
Yes, we have.
So that speculative aspect is what leads people to compare it to things like gold or art.
Yeah.
Their value isn't necessarily tied to their practical use,
Right.
but rather to market perception and scarcity.
It's really interesting. The article points out that Bitcoin's total value right now is
Yeah.
1/10 of all the gold in the world.
It's a crazy statistic
It is.
when you think about it.
It really is. And it kind of makes you wonder, like, where could this be going?
Right.
Especially when you think about how gold has performed over time.
Yeah, and that's a good comparison to make because,
Mm.
while gold has been seen as kind of a safe haven asset,
Right.
its returns haven't exactly been,
Shot teller.
off the charts.
Yeah.
It's been more about preserving wealth
Right.
than multiplying it.
I see.
So could Bitcoin follow a similar trajectory?
Hmm.
That's the big question.
Yeah, that's the thing that I find so intriguing about all this.
Yeah.
Is that it feels like we're witnessing the birth of something huge.
It does.
But we're still so early in the game.
We are.
It's hard to predict where it's going.
Yeah, and that's why I think critical thinking is so important here.
Yeah.
Because it's easy to get caught up in the hype,
Oh, yeah.
especially when you hear stories about early Bitcoin adopters.
Right, becoming millionaires.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But you have to remember that those gains were made during a period of explosive growth
Uh-huh.
that might not be sustainable.
So are you saying Bitcoin could be in a bubble right now?
Well, there are certainly some signs that point in that direction.
Okay.
The article cites some interesting statistics from the Federal Reserve.
Okay, what did they find?
Well, it turns out that only about 10% of Americans have ever owned cryptocurrency.
Wow, that's a lot lower than I thought.
Yeah, it's surprising.
Yeah,
And even among those who have the median holding is pretty small,
okay.
just $300.
Wow. So most people aren't actually using Bitcoin for payments or holding that much of it.
Right.
So what's driving its current value then?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think a lot of it seems to be driven by speculation,
Uh-huh.
FOMO, that fear of missing out,
Yeah.
and the hope that Bitcoin will eventually become a mainstream form of payment
Okay.
or even replace traditional currencies.
And that's where the article goes there.
Yeah.
It actually poses the question, could Bitcoin eventually become like a dominant global currency?
Right. Could we see a Bitcoin standard
Yeah.
replace the current dollar standard?
That's a really interesting thought.
It is a bold idea.
Yeah.
And while it might sound like science fiction to some,
Uh-huh.
it's not entirely implausible,
Really?
especially when you consider the growing distrust in centralized systems
Yeah.
and the appeal of a decentralized, transparent currency like Bitcoin.
So walk me through this. What would a world running on Bitcoin actually look like?
Well, in a Bitcoin standard world,
Okay.
you would probably be earning and spending Bitcoin just like you use dollars or euros today.
Okay, so I'd be getting paid in Bitcoin. And then the price of my morning coffee would fluctuate wildly from day to day.
Well, volatility is a legitimate concern,
Yeah.
but proponents argue that as Bitcoin matures
Mm-hmm.
and gains wider adoption,
Okay.
those wild price swings will become less frequent
Yeah.
and less extreme.
Okay. I mean, but even if the volatility issue was addressed,
Right.
wouldn't a complete shift to a Bitcoin standard
Yeah.
require massive changes to our financial infrastructure and regulations?
Absolutely it would.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we'd need robust systems
Yeah.
for storing, exchanging, and spending Bitcoin securely,
Uh-huh.
and clear legal frameworks would be essential
Yeah.
to protect consumers and prevent fraud.
Right.
It's a massive undertaking,
Okay.
but one that some people believe is inevitable.
Wow. This is getting really deep.
It is.
I'm starting to see why Bitcoin is so polarizing.
Yeah.
It's not just about technology or finance. It's
Mhm.
about fundamentally changing the way our world operates.
You've hit the nail on the head. It challenges power structures
Yeah.
that we've taken for granted
So we have.
for centuries.
Right. And that brings us to another point the article raises,
Okay.
is that some governments see Bitcoin as a threat.
They do.
And I'm kind of curious as to why that is.
Well, think about it.
Okay.
Bitcoin operates independently of any central bank or government control.
Mm.
It undermines their ability to manipulate currencies,
Uh-huh.
enforce capital controls,
Right.
and track financial transactions.
Okay.
So for some, it's a direct challenge to their authority.
Which explains why we've seen attempts to regulate
Right.
or even ban Bitcoin in some countries.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But here's the fascinating part.
Okay.
Despite those crackdowns, Bitcoin has not only survived, but thrived.
Hmm.
And that's because of its decentralized nature.
Okay.
It's incredibly resilient.
Right.
You can't shut down a network
Yeah.
that's spread across millions of computers worldwide.
It's like a digital hydra.
Exactly.
You cut off one head and two more grow back.
Yeah, that's a great analogy.
Yeah.
And it speaks to the power of blockchain technology.
Okay, so I think we need to break down blockchain a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I hear that term everywhere,
Yeah.
but I still don't fully grasp what it is
Yeah.
or why it's so important.
You're not alone.
Okay, good.
Blockchain is a complex topic,
Yeah.
but at its core,
Okay.
it's a secure and transparent way
Okay.
to record and verify transactions.
Okay.
So imagine a digital ledger
Mm-hmm.
that's distributed across a network of computers
Okay.
rather than being controlled by a single entity.
So instead of having like a bank or a government keeping track of all of our transactions,
Right.
it's like everyone on the network has a copy of the ledger.
Exactly.
Wow.
And that makes it incredibly difficult to tamper with or corrupt the data,
right.
because any changes would have to be approved by a majority of the network.
That's pretty ingenious.
It is.
It's like a built-in security system.
Right.
That prevents fraud and manipulation.
Exactly.
No wonder governments are feeling a little threatened.
Well, it's not just governments.
Oh.
Blockchain has the potential to disrupt a wide range of industries.
Like what?
Well, from finance and supply chain management
Okay.
to healthcare and even voting systems.
Wow, this is blowing my mind.
Yeah.
I knew Bitcoin was a big deal,
Yeah.
but I never realized just how far-reaching its impact could be.
It's a true game changer.
It is.
And we're only just beginning to see its potential.
Okay. I think we need to take a moment to process all of this.
Yeah, we've covered a lot
I have.
in a short amount of time.
We've gone from the dual nature of Bitcoin's value to the concept of a Bitcoin standard
Uh-huh.
and the power of blockchain technology.
It's a lot to take in,
It is.
but it's all essential to understanding the complex and evolving world of Bitcoin.
You know what I have to say? I'm starting to feel a little less intimidated by it all.
Good.
You know, I'm starting to see Bitcoin not just as a speculative investment, but as a powerful force for change,
Yeah,
for better or for worse.
that's the key takeaway, I think.
Yeah.
You know, Bitcoin is more than just a digital currency.
Yeah.
It's a catalyst for a wider conversation about the future of money, power, and technology.
Mm,
And it's a conversation worth having.
absolutely. And speaking of conversations,
Yep.
we've got a lot more to discuss about Bitcoin,
do.
including its potential pitfalls
Uh-huh.
and the ethical considerations surrounding its use.
Right.
But we'll save that for after a quick break.
Sounds good.
Don't go anywhere.
Okay, so before the break, we were talking about how some governments see Bitcoin as a threat.
Right.
But the article also points out that some individuals
Yeah.
see it as a tool for empowerment,
Mm-hmm.
particularly in countries with unstable economies
Right.
or repressive regimes.
Exactly.
So for people living in places where their savings can be wiped out
Right.
by hyperinflation?
Or their financial transactions monitored by
Yeah.
authoritarian governments, Bitcoin offers a way to protect their wealth
Yeah, it gives them a sense of control
and maintain some level of financial privacy.
and security that traditional systems can't offer.
It's like a digital life raft.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
For those who don't trust their own governments or financial institutions,
Yeah.
it's really interesting.
Yeah, and that's where I think the whole concept of decentralization
Okay.
becomes really powerful.
So we talked about decentralization in terms of how Bitcoin operates,
Uh-huh.
but I'm curious to explore the broader implications of a decentralized world.
Okay.
What does it actually mean
Yeah.
for individuals and society as a whole?
Well, it's a profound question
It is.
and one that's difficult to answer definitively.
Yeah.
But I think at its core, decentralization is about shifting power
Okay.
away from centralized institutions.
So less reliance on governments
Yeah.
and big corporations.
Right.
More control in the hands of the people.
Precisely.
Interesting.
And that can have both positive and negative implications. Okay, how so?
Well, on the positive side, it can foster greater individual autonomy,
Okay.
innovation, and resilience.
So if we're not all beholden to a single point of failure,
Right.
the system becomes less susceptible
Exactly.
to corruption, censorship, or collapse.
Yeah, it makes the system more robust.
Okay, I can see that.
Yeah.
But I can also see how decentralization could lead to chaos and instability.
Sure.
I mean, who sets the rules in a decentralized world?
Right.
Who ensures fairness and accountability?
Those are valid concerns.
Yeah.
And ones that we're still grappling with as we navigate this uncharted territory.
Right.
A decentralized world doesn't magically solve all our problems.
Okay.
In fact, it might create new ones
Yeah.
that we haven't even anticipated yet.
It's like the Wild West of finance.
Yeah, there's definitely a sense of that. It's
Yeah.
a frontier full of opportunities,
Okay.
but also risks and uncertainties.
Uh-huh.
And as with any frontier, it attracts both pioneers and outlaws.
Speaking of outlaws.
We can't talk about Bitcoin without addressing the whole issue of illicit activities.
Right.
The article mentions that Bitcoin's anonymity has made it a favorite tool for criminals
Yeah.
involved in drug trafficking, money laundering,
Right.
and other shady dealings.
It's true that Bitcoin has been used for illicit purposes,
Yeah,
just like cash has been for centuries.
right.
But it's important to remember that the vast majority of Bitcoin transactions
Okay.
are perfectly legitimate.
Okay.
And as blockchain technology evolves,
Yeah.
it's becoming increasingly difficult
Ah.
to use Bitcoin anonymously.
So the bad guys are finding it harder to hide their tracks.
Exactly.
Good.
Law enforcement agencies are getting better at tracing Bitcoin transactions.
Okay.
And new tools are being developed to enhance transparency and accountability.
That's reassuring to hear.
Yeah.
But even if the criminal element is minimized,
Right.
there are still ethical concerns
Sure.
surrounding Bitcoin's environmental impact. The article mentions that the energy required to mine Bitcoin
Yeah.
is enormous
It is.
and growing rapidly.
It's a valid concern.
So it's like Bitcoin's success is coming at a cost to the planet.
That's one way to look at it.
Yeah.
But it's not a simple black and white issue.
Okay.
The Bitcoin community is well aware of the environmental concerns,
Okay.
and there are ongoing efforts to develop more sustainable mining practices
Okay.
and transition to renewable energy sources.
So it's not all doom and gloom.
Not at all.
Okay, good.
There are a lot of brilliant minds working on solutions.
Yeah.
And I'm optimistic that we can find ways to make Bitcoin more environmentally friendly
Okay.
without sacrificing its core value.
Okay, that's good news.
Yeah.
Let's shift gears for a moment
Okay.
and talk about something a bit lighter.
Sure.
The whole celebrity coin craze.
Oh, yeah.
It seems like every other day, a new celebrity is launching their own cryptocurrency.
It's definitely become a trend.
It has.
And it's not surprising given the hype surrounding Bitcoin
Right.
and the potential for quick profits.
But the article raises some red flags about these celebrity coins.
It is.
It argues that many of them lack any real utility
Yeah.
or underlying value.
They're basically just riding the wave
Yeah.
of their celebrity's popularity.
So what's the allure of these celebrity coins?
Well, there's the FOMO factor, of course.
The fear of missing out?
Right. Nobody wants to miss out on the next big thing.
Yeah.
But there's also a psychological aspect at play.
Yeah.
People often admire and trust celebrities.
Yeah.
And they're more likely to believe their endorsements
Right.
even when it comes to financial products.
It's almost like a cult of personality,
Yeah.
but in the financial world.
That's a great analogy.
It is.
And it's a reminder that investing should be based on sound research and analysis,
Yeah.
not blind faith or emotional attachments.
Okay, so if celebrity coins are a risky bet,
Right.
what about Bitcoin itself?
Yeah,
Is it a legitimate investment or just a speculative bubble waiting to burst?
that's the million-dollar question.
It is.
And there's no easy answer.
Okay.
Bitcoin is a volatile asset,
Right.
and its price is influenced by a complex interplay of factors.
Like what?
Well, you've got market sentiment, technological advancements,
Okay.
regulatory changes,
Uh-huh.
and even geopolitical events.
So it's not for the faint of heart.
Definitely not.
Yeah,
It's a high-risk, high-reward investment
Okay.
that requires a strong understanding of the technology,
Yeah.
the market, and your own risk tolerance.
And probably a good dose of patience too, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, we've already seen Bitcoin
Yeah.
experience wild swings in price.
It's not a get-rich-quick scheme.
Okay.
It's a long-term game
Okay.
that requires a willingness to ride out the inevitable ups and downs.
Okay, so before we wrap up our Bitcoin deep dive,
Okay.
let's circle back to the article's closing analogy.
Right.
The idea that Bitcoin is like a digital deity seeking immortality.
Interesting.
What does that even mean?
It's a thought-provoking metaphor.
It is.
I think it speaks to the almost mythical status
Mhm.
that Bitcoin has attained.
Right.
It's become more than just a currency
Yeah.
or a technology.
Uh-huh.
It's a symbol of rebellion against centralized power,
Okay.
a beacon of hope for a more equitable financial future.
And like any deity,
Right.
it requires faith and devotion from its followers to survive and thrive.
Exactly.
Wow.
And that's where things get really interesting,
Okay.
because the future of Bitcoin ultimately depends
Yeah.
on whether enough people continue to believe in its value
Yeah, huh?
and its potential to change the world.
Wow, we've covered so much ground today.
We have.
I feel like I've gone from Bitcoin novice
Yeah.
to at least somewhat informed.
I'd say you've graduated with honors.
Stop.
But seriously, it's great to see your enthusiasm for learning about this complex and fascinating topic.
I have to admit, I'm still a bit wary of the whole cryptocurrency world,
Sure.
but I can't deny that Bitcoin has sparked something truly revolutionary.
It has.
It's challenged our assumptions about money power and technology,
Yeah.
and it's forced us to confront some uncomfortable truths
Yeah.
about the systems that govern our lives.
And that's why it's such an important conversation to have,
Yeah.
regardless of whether you're a diehard Bitcoin believer
Right.
or a skeptical observer.
Well said.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Okay.
what key takeaways should our listener walk away with?
Well, I'd say the most important thing is to remember that Bitcoin
Yeah.
is a complex and evolving phenomenon
Mm-hmm.
with both immense potential
Yeah.
and inherent risks.
It's a tool that can be used for good or for ill,
Right.
and its ultimate impact will depend on the choices we make
Yeah.
as individuals and as a society.
And those choices should be informed by careful research,
Yeah.
critical thinking,
Ah.
and a healthy dose of skepticism.
So don't just blindly follow the hype or dismiss it outright.
Right.
Take the time to understand the technology, the market, and the potential consequences, both positive and negative.
Because the future of Bitcoin,
Yeah.
and perhaps the future of finance itself,
Mm.
is still being written.
Wow.
And we all have a role to play in shaping that future.
Beautifully put. I think that's a perfect note to end on.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Bitcoin.
It's been a pleasure.
It's been an enlightening journey,
It has.
and I'm sure we'll be revisiting this topic again
Yeah.
as the story continues to unfold. Okay, so we're back, and we've covered a lot about Bitcoin,
We have.
the potential upsides and downsides.
It's been a real deep dive
It has been.
into this complex world.
So as we kind of wrap things up here,
Okay.
what are some of the big questions our listeners should be thinking about?
Well, I think the most important one is,
Yeah.
what role do I want Bitcoin to play in my life, if any?
Because it's not just about
Right.
whether Bitcoin takes over the world. It's about how each person chooses to engage with it.
Or not engage with it.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So do you see it as an investment,
Right.
a tool for privacy,
Uh-huh.
a way to kind of take control of your finances?
Yeah.
Or are you totally skeptical of the whole thing?
And there are valid reasons to be skeptical.
For sure.
There's a lot of hype,
Yeah.
a lot of volatility.
And that's why it's so important to really think critically about all this.
Absolutely.
Do your own research.
Right.
Don't just take anyone's word for it.
Not even mine.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, the article we read really got me thinking about the nature of money itself.
Okay.
Like, what is money, really?
Yeah, it's an interesting question.
We're so used to thinking of it as,
Right.
pieces of paper,
Dollars and cents.
numbers in a bank account.
Right.
But what makes those things valuable?
It all comes down to trust.
Trust.
Trust in the government.
Right.
Trust in the financial system.
But what happens when that trust breaks down?
That's the question Bitcoin forces us to confront. It offers an alternative,
Okay.
a system where trust isn't placed in a central authority,
Right.
but in a decentralized network,
Okay.
in a mathematical algorithm.
So it's almost like replacing faith with math.
In a way.
Yeah.
Wow. So where does all this leave us?
Yeah.
What's the final verdict on Bitcoin?
I don't think there is a final verdict.
Okay.
And that's what makes it so fascinating.
Yeah.
Bitcoin's story is still being written.
Right.
It could become a global currency.
Uh-huh.
It could fade away.
Or it could become something we haven't even thought of yet.
Exactly.
Yeah, it really feels like we're in the early days of something big.
We are.
And it's exciting and scary all at the same time.
It is.
So as we close out this deep dive,
Yeah.
I think the biggest takeaway for our listeners is to stay curious,
Stay informed
stay informed.
and stay engaged.
Don't be afraid to question things.
Right.
Challenge your own assumptions.
And be open to new possibilities. Because whether you love Bitcoin or hate it,
Or just don't understand it.
it's a force to be reckoned with.
It is.
And this conversation is only going to get bigger and more important in the years to come.
Absolutely.
So thanks for joining us on this wild ride through the world of Bitcoin.
My pleasure.
We hope you learned something.
Yeah.
And maybe even had your mind blown a little bit.
Hopefully.
Until next time, keep exploring.
Keep learning.
Keep learning.
And keep questioning.
And we'll see you on the next deep dive.